In a previous podcast, I shared with all of you that the Davis-Sterling Act is the law in the state of California that governs how homeowner associations are to operate. And embedded in the act are several provisions of the California Civil Code. And one of those provisions in particular is Civil Code 5600. And 5600 states in part, an association shall not impose or collect an assessment or fee that exceeds the amount necessary to defray the cost for which it is levied. In other words, Civil Code 5600 essentially says that a California homeowner association cannot collect assessments greater than that which is needed to fund the operation. Today I'm going to share with you two programs at EHR that may in fact conflict and may in fact violate California Civil Code 5600. This is going to be a podcast you are definitely going to want to watch in its entirety, and it's going to be a podcast that you're going to want to share with your neighbors who may not be aware of the Ranch Report podcast. Buckle up, folks. It may get a little turbulent, and you may feel some uneasiness with the information I'm about to share. Let me stress that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host, yours truly, and may not reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of East Highlands Ranch, East Highlands Ranch Board of Directors, or their managing agent, the Management Trust. Welcome to the Ranch Report, where transparency lives. My name is Mark Falcone, and today is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. Thank you all for being here. One of the first of the two topics to discuss today is the Employee Stock Ownership Program, or the ESOP program. If you recall, during the campaign last year, I made a promise to all of you that I would do my level best from day one to try to end our contribution to this program. Let me refresh your memory as to what the ESOP program is all about. East Highlands Ranch does not have any employees. All of the employees you see are employed by the management company, the Management Trust, that is contracted by EHR to manage the daily operations of the ranch. And the Management Trust is, I believe, the only management company in the state of California that is employee-owned. And instead of having a 401k program, retirement program that most corporations have, the Management Trust has what they call an ESOP program, an Employee Stock Ownership Program. Keep in mind that the Management Trust is not publicly traded. It is a privately held company. And the way the program works is that in order to be eligible for the ESOP as an employee of the Management Trust, you must be employed for 2 years. After those 2 years, you begin to vest in the program at 20% each year over the course of the next 5 years. So in other words, you have to work 7 years to be 100% vested in this employee stock ownership program. And up until 2023, 2024, this program was fully funded by the Management Trust themselves. Sometime, I believe, in late 2023, the Management Trust came to EHR and was looking for our contribution to their employee retirement program. We don't know in the negotiations what that initial contribution was to be set at, but what we do know, based upon the minutes from February 7th, 2024, let me pull them up, we do know that our contribution was set at 3%. And again, let me go back here. You can see this is from February 7th, 2024. Under item number 3, the Management Trust Retirement Contribution Cost, let me just read it here. A motion was made by Director Yager and seconded by Director McCurry on approving annual contribution to the Management Trust Employee Stock Ownership Program associated with on-site staff of the association, not to exceed 3% of eligible on-site staff payroll. This is very important here. The contribution is to be budgeted accordingly for every new fiscal year under a new line item called ESOP contribution. To their credit, Director Underwood and Director Bob Hamilton opposed this program, but the motion did pass 3-2. That was in 2024. Now, I do know that I have made several requests throughout the campaign and since I was elected to find exactly what our contribution in dollars has been in fiscal 24-25 and year-to-date 25-26. At the annual budget town hall last year, where I was the only homeowner present, I asked everybody sitting at the dais, what is our contribution for 24-25, and what is our contribution to this program year-to-date? The answer to my question was just blank stares from everybody. I had to prod them along, and I even asked, ballpark it for me. That's when Spencer Matthew, vice president of the Management Trust for Desert Division, spoke up and said, well, I think it's about 15, 16,000, but we don't know for sure. But don't hold me to that. So that was the number thrown out at me. Subsequent to that, I had asked in writing and in verbal many times for the exact ledger to see the exact dollar amount contributed to this ESOP program. I never received the ledger. I received in writing numbers, 15,000, 16,000, maybe as high as 17,000. But nothing concrete, nothing for sure. So in my opinion, our contribution to this ESOP program potentially violates Civil Code 5600 because we, as members, you and I, homeowners, through our assessments, we are helping to fund a third-party agent's employees' retirement program. Does that make sense to you? Certainly doesn't make sense to me. So, subsequent to my being elected at the end of May, a week later on June 6th, President Underwood and I met for breakfast. And in our breakfast meeting, this employee stock ownership program was discussed. During our discussion, Gary made the comment and said, we now have the votes to overturn it. I thought, sweet, this is going to be a slam dunk. I asked Gary to ensure that this program was on our June agenda board meeting to discuss. Gary made a note on his yellow pad, legal pad, and said he put it on the agenda. The June agenda rolled out. The ESOP program was not on the agenda. It was too late to put it on because the agenda had already been published. However, there was an off-the-record conversation at the meeting regarding this program. And that's when Gary backtracked and was not looking to end the program immediately. He was looking to have a discussion to possibly end it at the end of the fiscal year. Now, I know from being in these board seats that you don't always get what you want and you have to learn to compromise. And I was willing to compromise. Instead of ending it immediately, which I would rather see, I'd be willing to compromise and end it at the end of the fiscal year. Gary promised that it would be on the July agenda. It was on the July agenda, but Gary Underwood was absent and was unable to attend. In his place was Kurt Anderson facilitating the board meeting. And instead of having a discussion and taking a vote on this program, Kurt Anderson punted. He punted the ball, making the comment that he would rather have Gary Underwood present to participate in the overall discussion. And that item was then pushed to the August board meeting. Now, in August, I was out of town in Monterey. However, I was able to participate in the board meeting via Zoom. And in that Zoom meeting, board meeting, I made the motion when this item came up to end the ESOP program at the end of fiscal 25-26, which would be April 30th of this year, just a few weeks away. Gary seconded my motion. I thought, great, we're making progress. We may get a vote out of this. Instead, Pat McCurry filibustered, if you will, and wanted to have a discussion to hold off on taking any vote because there's a chance that we may want to continue this program in fiscal year 26-27 and wanted to have that discussion during the budget season. Gary agreed. But keep in mind, Gary seconded my motion, so that motion had to be voted on. Gary didn't recall seconding my motion. The minute taker at the time Didn't have a good record of the minute as to what the conversation was. However, our general manager and myself recalled Gary seconding my motion. Long story short, there was no vote taken. My motion died because of that. So again, that item was then kicked down the road. In fact, in September, that item was not on the agenda. However, in the month of September, that board meeting was rather contentious. And you must keep in mind that I'm going to use the word despise. These board members despise me. And I've got proof I'm going to show you here in a moment. I think it's because, in fact, I know it's because I'm over the target. I'm not the type of person that goes along to get along. There is incompetencies in the operation. I've often said that we live in a culture of mediocrity. That's not to my liking. There's never any accountability. There's never coaching. There's never any developing. So this board despises me, and I'm just going to get sideways here for a moment and just kind of get off track, but I'm going to just show you exactly what I'm talking about. Just the other day, I sent out an email promoting 2 candidates. Where is it here? Okay, here we go. Promoting 2 candidates running for the board. And I got a response back from Pat McCurry. You can see here, Mark, why do you continue to pretend who you are? The treasurer of East Highlands Ranch Board of Directors, you are not. Why do you contribute this character assassination? Oh, I'm sorry. Why do you continue this character assassination of board members? You have no evidence to prove any of your allegations. You are a despicable board member. Again, that was from Pat McCurry. I know that only because I could tell it was Pat's email address. So in September, I had requested that, strike that. In the past, I had asked management if our recreational activity assets were being inventoried. I was told on several occasions they were, and that they were being inventoried quarterly. In the September meeting, I made the request to review the inventory results for the last 3 inventories, the last 3 quarters. And I also made the request to be present at any subsequent inventories. I received significant pushback from Gary Underwood and from management. So much pushback to the extent that I had to, and I didn't want to do this, but I had no choice, I had to pull out Corporate Code 8334 and recite that as a director, I had an absolute right to request this documentation, and I did not have to have a reason as to my request. However, I did provide a reason because reviewing inventories, taking inventories is just good business practice. When it came time to vote, that vote went down 3-1. Pat McCurry was absent. Anderson, myself, and Hamilton voted in favor of receiving these quarterly inventory results and being present at subsequent inventories. Gary Underwood was in opposition. That was September. We reviewed the minutes at the next board meeting. So in the October meeting, the minutes from September were not reflected accurately. And they were not reflected accurately until last month. And in that October board meeting, I believe, because of the hatred towards me, the board took action against me. And one of the actions they took is that they removed me as treasurer of EHR. And in my place, and they also removed me from the Financial Monitoring Committee as a liaison. In my place, they put Pat McCurry as the treasurer, and they placed former board member Fred Jogger as the liaison to the Financial Monitoring Committee. So I'm going to stop there for October, but I'm now going to talk about the second item that I wanted to discuss today. And this is probably far more egregious and far more intense than just the ESOP program. And that second item is what they call the Employee Wellness Enhancement Benefits. Again, EHR has no employees. that are employed by the management trust. And the management trust offers, like any corporation, health benefits, health, dental, vision, disability, and life insurance. And as an employee, if you sign up for the health benefits through the management trust will pay a portion of those health benefits based upon the following. Based upon you an attestation signed that you do not smoke, based upon you your blood pressure being 130/80, I believe it is, and your A1C coming back at no higher than level 5. If you pass all three of those, I believe the amount's $400 and $450 that you receive that you can apply towards your monthly premium. And let's just say it's $400, and as an employee that you're just insuring yourself just for health benefits, your monthly premium is $800. You have $800 because you pass the three requirements, the requisites for management trust. Management trust gives you $400. Your now monthly health benefit for medical out-of-pocket expense is $400. Start with $800. Management trust gives you $400. You're left with $400 out of pocket. That is what I would call a personal expense. East Highlands Ranch then comes along and says, hey, you know what? Of that $400, we're going to pay 50% of that. In other words, you and me, as members through our assessments, are going to pay to help fund the out-of-pocket expense of a third-party agent's employees' health benefits. So that $400 now becomes $200 because we pay the $200, you and I. So that in and of itself, I mean, just common sense doesn't tell you that's potentially not legal, potentially a conflict with Civil Code 5600 and a conflict and a violation of 5600. So that program has been going on for at least 10 years, probably longer. And because this podcast is called The Ranch Report, Where Transparency Lives, in full disclosure, when I initially served on the board back in 2014, 2015, I was told that this employee enhancement wellness benefit was already in place and part of the benefit program for the employees. So I voted for it, in full disclosure. However, subsequent to my resignation on the board and then coming into the office and working for the management trust, I saw the breakdown of how this actually works. And I realized then that this was not a copacetic program. This has never been communicated to you. It's never been shown in our annual budget disclosure. So you never knew about it until now. That you and I, for at least the last 10 years, probably the last 2 decades, have been paying and funding the personal medical benefits, health premium, for a third-party agent's employees. So what I did in October of last year, because we were not making any progress on ending the ESOP program, which in my opinion is a violation of 5600, and because of the employee and enhancement wellness benefits I just explained, I retained the legal services of L.S. Carlson Law out of Alicio Viejo. And what we did in November is we sent what is called a 5200 request, Civil Code 5200. And that is a request for documentation. And we requested the financials and all the ledgers for the current year and the previous 2 years. EHR responded to my attorney, provided the information. It was a ton of ledgers you can imagine, over the last 3 years. And just as I suspected, when my attorney went through this documentation, there was no transparency. We could not find where we were contributing to the ESOP program or to the employee enhancement wellness benefits. It's going to take some additional research, some additional request of East Highlands Ranch. But I do know that the ESOP program and the Employee Enhancement Wellness Benefit Program has never been included in the contract with the Management Trust and EHR. It's not in there. Furthermore, these programs have never been disclosed to the membership. There was zero transparency. So there is a number that I have in my mind that I really don't want to say, but if you can imagine, you got 22 employees, you do the quick math, and of course, not all of them are going to sign up for health benefits, but the majority of them do. You extrapolate the monthly contribution that you and I and the rest of the members are making to this program, and you extrapolate that out over the course of 10 years minimum, again, probably more like 15 or 20, and you will see exactly the amount of contribution, potential illegal contribution, that EHR has been making to these programs. I wanted to share that with all of you. This is something that my attorney is investigating. We are investigating the financials of East Highlands Ranch. It is unfortunately costing me a fortune, but I can't let this go. I can't sweep this under the rug. We need to have finality out of this. We need to make sure that East Highlands Ranch is collecting assessments from you and I and the rest of the membership on the up and up with integrity. So I encourage you to reach out to me, ask any additional questions as to what this is all about. But that's just the high-level view as to what I wanted to share. So with that, it's been, 23 minutes here. It's actually shorter than what I thought it would be. But in closing, I just want to say that don't forget that we do have an election coming up. Ballots hit the homes the last week of April, and they are mail-in ballots, with the election actually taking place the last Wednesday in the month of May at the annual meeting. So I recommend that there are 4 candidates running for 2 seats. 2 incumbents, Gary Underwood and Bob Hamilton, are running, and the 2 new candidates running to fill these seats are Letitia Labrada and also Joe Nash. I highly recommend, in order to create the change that we need here in our community, here at EHR, we need 3 like-minded individuals. I can't do it by myself because these other 4 board members, as I say, despise me and would rather see me off this board. So I encourage you to vote for Joe Nash and Letitia Labrada so we can implement the kinds of change that we truly need here at EHR. So with that, I ask that you hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for your support. And until the next time, thank you for watching The Ranch Report. Take care.